What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have an album review for you. So, we started off with something a little bit more underground for this weekend of the 14th of October, but eventually I did want to get down to one of the big ones here, namely because this band's hype meter has fucking jumped up through the fucking roof here lately, and admittedly, I was curious, so I am going to go over the newest offering from Lorna Shore, Pain Remains. This again comes out on the 14th of October on Century Media Records. This band formed in New Jersey in 2009. This is their fourth full-length overall and their first full-length with Will Ramos on vocals, who everyone seems to have fallen in love with here lately. They even stuck a fucking camera down his throat just to see if there was a feral pig living in it. Admittedly, the dude is really good. Like, he's got some ferocious fucking growls, and his stage presence is pretty fucking solid. But yeah, this band is essentially symphonic deathcore, and we went over the And I Return to Nothingness EP not too long ago, and we were kind of underwhelmed, to be honest. But I figured I'd give this full length a chance to see what they do with a full album with this new singer and sort of expanded style here lately. And again, I figured with all the hype this band is getting, especially after the To the Hellfire fucking breakdown dropped, Jesus, that had like every deathcore fanboy jizzing in their pants. And for the female deathcore fans, frothing at the gash or something. People liked it, is what I'm saying in a very gross way. I didn't quite get that, but again, I wanted to go over this just to see what they did with the larger album, and well, I mean, this is definitely a larger album. This is over an hour worth of symphonic deathcore, and it gets off to a bit of a rocky start. Admittedly, the first two tracks did not gel very well with me. Welcome Back, O Sleeping Dreamer, and Into the Earth both kind of sound messy. Now, this band is brutal as hell. There is no argument there, but I think with death metal or deathcore or death grind, anything death metal centric, brutality is kind of like square one. Like, that's where you start. Like, you know, let's make sure everything sounds sonically heavy and just disgusting. And they have that accomplished. But when it comes down to songwriting, mainly this opening track is just sort of a jumbled mess of ideas. It was like they had a grocery list of all the things they needed to pick up at the deathcore slash death metal slash kind of black metal market, and they just kind of threw the ingredients in, really didn't let it simmer, and here we go. It opens up, much like a lot of these songs open up, with a big symphonic lead-in, big epic choirs, and it all kind of sounds a bit cheesy, admittedly. Like, by the time I got to the halfway point, I was really tired of the symphonic lead-ins, like Lorna of the Rings, or, you know, something like that, like Final Fantasy fucking symphonic stuff. It's fine, but it feels artificial. And, you know, I listen to some, you know, symphonic bands like Flesh God Apocalypse and Septic Flesh. I think those bands do it much better because they employ it, you know, in terms of like dynamics a lot better. This, it's almost kind of a constant din in the background behind all the furious deathcore and admittedly like tech death slash melodic tech death sort of riffing that comes in. But it's the way the song is constructed. I feel like they're in a hurry to get to the next checkpoint. It's like, all right, we had like the cool blast beat intro. Let's get some melodic death metal riffs in here. Let's, you know, chug along on this riff for just a few seconds. Let's make sure the symphony shines, because Lord knows we can't have them shut the fuck up for a minute. And then we have to get to the inevitable breakdown, which I hope you liked the To the Hellfire breakdown, because it is on, I would say, most of the tracks. Most of the tracks have that same heavy, single chord chuggy breakdown, with Will essentially belching forth all the fury and fucking gut-wrenching horror he possibly can. And again, he does a good job. But it's where the breakdowns come in, and this is sort of an issue across this entire album, minus a few spots, is it's erratic. Like, you can't necessarily see the breakdown coming. They kind of just shoehorn them in different spots, even in songs where I don't think they necessarily needed a breakdown. And I know that's kind of taboo for this band, or, you know, deathcore in general, but maybe not every song needs a breakdown, especially these same single chord chugs, let's play that riff but super slow kind of breakdowns. And I mean, honestly, it just kind of takes the punch out of breakdowns in general. It wasn't until like the midpoint of the album where we started getting some breakdowns that actually had like a melody behind them that was really catchy, like really tuneful. Namely Soulless Existence and Pain Remains Part 2. After all I've done, I disappear. That's just kind of how it works, bud. But those breakdowns, while still fucking super fucking heavy, actually employ like a melodic line to it, and not just like the symphonies, but actually like some cool guitar melodies on there. And even like the vocal accompaniment actually kind of plays the melody a bit. But most of these breakdowns, namely on, again, Into the Earth, Sun Eater, Wrath, and Apotheosis, they just kind of come in out of nowhere. Like, you might get a small vocal line that's belted out, that's slightly isolated before it hits, but they just kind of shoehorn them in. Even in spots where, you know, the flow of the song is actually starting to move a little bit. Like, it's not just, you know, stagnating on breakdowns or the same symphonic melodies that you've heard on, you know, every track, which the symphonic melodies, again, they add something to it. They add like a lush atmosphere to it, but a lot of them feel the same. And sameness is kind of an issue on here. Same kind of breakdowns. Again, the symphonic elements, kind of samey, like, you know, they kind of have that dark choir aspect to them, and big sweeping triumphant, what I assume are horns and strings in the background. I don't know, it sounds like it's all synthesized, it probably is. But the main part is they kind of sound the same, like to the point where it's interchangeable. You could kind of put those behind any track, and I think you would get the same effect. And that interchangeability kind of works with the guitar lines too, unfortunately. A lot of the riffs seem kind of repeated, like you have these giant, triumphant, epic melodies, but while they are effective at first, namely in Sun Eater and Curse to Die, later on, they kind of feel like you've heard those same melodies before. They're kind of going for the same thing. And then there's even spots where they speed up a little bit and, you know, do some more like intricate tech metal riffing, like, you know, kind of Necrophagist-esque, or like along the lines of Morse Principium-esque. But even those become kind of repetitive after a while because they become the go-to thing to do when they're doing a faster melodic song like Wrath, or again, Curse to Die. Now, before this fucking old dude keeps complaining even more, because I still have more complaints, I do want to say that this album isn't without some merit. I do think there are some good songs in here. You just kind of have to sift through a lot of the sameness. Soulless Existence, I think, is great. I think it's an awesome song. It's one of the longer songs at a little bit over 7 minutes, and this one, A, doesn't have a big, dumb fucking breakdown in it, which was kind of a relief because, again, those are just sort of pockmarked everywhere in this album. But this one actually plays more with dynamics, song building. This song flows differently than I would say anything else in the album. It's more mid-paced. It takes a little while to build into the faster sections, like the blast beats and the gallops. The breakdown itself is very melodic. It's part of the hook. It's not just a big slam or anything like that. And there are some really cool discernible riffs that I think are unique to the song that really don't pop up much of anywhere else in this album. All that coming together in terms of the songwriting, and then you have a very like more emotional performance from Will vocally, like he sounds desperate and pleading in spots. I think all that comes together really well, even to the point where I can't bitch about the symphonic elements because I think they really lend themselves to that song especially. And there's even sections in the 3-part title track Epic that actually really showcase this as well, but inevitably this band goes back to the breakdown well, or just a lot of the same tropes that are repeated to infinity and beyond on here. Now, as you can probably sense, I'm getting back to the bitching part, and yeah, again, I have more complaints. One of them, and it's a big one, is the mix on here. To say this album is overproduced is an understatement. It sounds grand, it sounds big, but it doesn't sound very crisp. In fact, a lot of stuff seems to collide on here. I think the bass is up high, but it's very indistinguishable. Like, you can't really hear the bass playing very well, but you know it's there because, well, I mean, you'll probably hear your speakers bottom out if you fucking turn it up too loud, because this has bass drops, of course, the bass line, bass synths in there too. It's very bass heavy, so be careful when playing this on an expensive stereo because this might fucking wreck it a bit. But that isn't the only issue. Like, there's so much going on, and some of it kind of blends into mud on here. There are parts where the guitars feel completely buried by all the symphonic elements, how percussive it is, and even Will's vocal performance, which he's kind of coming at you in all different angles on here in terms of the mix. Like, you know, there's muffled screams, there's fucking huge pig fucking snorts and shit. I mean, you know, he's really good. But I also think the fact that they consistently layer him and throw on different effects and kind of, again, move him around the mix, it gets to be a bit much. And I hate to say it, but this kind of feels like artificial. Like, I don't know, it doesn't sound like people playing this. It feels like this was all kind of part of like an algorithm to make the most brutal but the most symphonic deathcore album ever, and this was the result. Even going back and listening to Shadow of Intent, their last one, that at least sounds more organic to me. This doesn't. This unfortunately sounds like the kind of band where if the laptop goes down, the fucking show's over. Because honestly, when you strip back all the symphonic elements, all the, you know, production magic on here, this band is still good. It's just, you know, kind of bare bones. Like, honestly, the breakdowns aren't very clever. Like, they're just brutal, and I get it. Heaviness, you know, and deathcore, one of the big things in there, but there's really nothing to make them stand out from one another. So yeah, you just have a series of like, oh yeah, it was really fucking brutal, and then, you know, the next riff is like, oh yeah, that's cool, but I feel like I heard it on this track. And this album definitely suffers from bloat. I don't see any reason why this album needed to be almost 62 minutes long. There's a lot of buildup, but when it comes down to the payoff, kind of a mixed bag. Like the last track, Pain Remains Part 3, In a Sea of Fire. There is a huge build-up to this track. Like, it is, again, very epic, very, you know, mist sweeping down the mountains, or, you know, fucking Mount Doom erupting in Mordor. Something that grand. But when the song finally opens up past all the symphonic elements and the choirs and shit, you kind of get the same thing that you heard earlier in the album. Like, this song doesn't really get very grand until the end of the song. But it's also kind of that similar grandness that you hear when these guys wanted to channel a more epic vibe. Like, those melodies feel, again, interchangeable. They're kind of samey. And I will say, I think all the lead work on here is really well done. And, I mean, you know, musicality-wise, like, the drummer's definitely on point. But again, all of it feels like it goes to the deathcore well very often. And while I do think this album is ambitious, grand in scope, it kind of comes down to like the hype versus the reality, or the build-up versus the payoff. It's the same fucking argument. I don't think it is executed as well as it possibly could have. In a way, this band definitely shot for the stars, but kind of missed the trajectory and burned up on re-entry, in my opinion. So overall, I'm going to give this 2 stars. This isn't very good. I mean, it's okayish. There are songs that I do like on this. It's just, a lot of this is just so cram-packed full of the same thing, and it just kind of inevitably becomes this giant uniform listen. The production on here doesn't help, and the fact that they try to recapture that To the Hellfire breakdown on almost every single fucking song, it kind of got annoying. Like, it made me not like breakdowns, and I like breakdowns, so fucking just chill the fuck out on the breakdowns for a minute. It's clear that there's a lot of talent in this band. It just comes down to like the song construction, honestly, because a lot of these songs kind of just feel slapped together. And for symphonic metal, there should be a little bit of that symphony ethos. Symphonies are meticulously constructed. They're lavish. They flow beautifully, at least the ones that are very memorable. This, it just kind of feels like they let the symphony kind of flow on while they kind of just went all over the place trying to, I don't know, check off, again, a giant list of shit they wanted on this album. And again, it just doesn't come together very often very well. When it does, though, again, Soulless Existence and a good chunk of the 3-piece epic of the title track are really good. But is that repeated going to the well for a lot of different things? Not only the breakdowns, but a lot of the more intricate tech metal riffs, the big epic sweeping melodies, and even the symphonic arrangements in the background. It all kind of feels the same. Will's vocals are on point. Again, I really like the lead work on here, and I will admit that this probably is not meant for me. Like, I'm not the target demographic for this style of music. While I do like some symphonic metal, it's, you know, not my favorite, and I do like earlier deathcore, but a lot of modern deathcore is really hit or miss with me. But still, at the same time, if you guys love this, jam it to your heart's content. If you're big into fucking just stupid fucking heavy breakdowns and like lavish symphonic orchestral stuff, definitely check this out. You won't know whether you like it or hate it until you listen to it, so I would encourage you to at least check it out, form your own opinions. Don't just trust me. I'm just some dickhead on the internet that spouts off opinions way too much. It's fun though. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com where our Patreon is linked, as well as our shop. If you'd like to get one of our kick-ass t-shirts, that's where you go get them. We also have audio versions of some of our episodes if you would rather just listen to us than look at us, which again, totally get that too. And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, commenting, all that stuff. It really does mean the world to us. It is just awesome seeing this channel grow. And that is all due to you guys, that and the, just litany of different albums being hurled our direction, which I don't have any problem with because I love doing this. So with that, I thank you all one more time, and we will catch you later.